Welcome to the 90th most popular podcast in the universe. There's around 175,000 podcasts. Last year, we hit number 90. That makes us in the top 10th of 1%. But the show wouldn't exist without our modest Patreon page. So go check it out. It's $5 to support the show. All right, here we go. This is the Cameron Adair podcast with me, Cameron Adair. This is episode 30. I've been doing a podcast a year since I've been born. Today on the show is Matt Brown. Matt is a trained actor and filmmaker. He was in UCB in New York. Now, in addition to acting, he makes short films, for some of which I did the music. Here's Matt. All right, welcome. The last I started, I was using the other headphones, and the other guest was using the other mic, and I had to stop. I couldn't get in my zone because I was used to hearing it the other way.
I'm so in awe of the musicians who can differentiate. When people talk about albums, recording, oh, that's a deep sound, and people who really know sound and the way that acoustics play into a digital thing, it's a whole nother world to me.
It's a skill unto itself, really good engineers. There's a place for that, for knowing a lot about equipment.
Yeah.
But then you can get lost in the sauce.
Yeah.
When, what matters is the song good? Is the story good?
Yeah.
That's kind of part of my purge too. I want to sort of get back to basics, selling a bunch of equipment.
So what's the deal behind that? You just are thinking you've gotten caught up in the bullshit and you just get back to what it's all about.
Yeah, I've been practicing piano, and my dad a couple months ago let me hang on to his Martin Dreadnought. So really enjoying just playing piano and guitar and not so much making noises or worrying about what frequency I'm EQing or whatever.
Yeah.
I want to get more deep in my relationship, I guess, with music in that respect. It's kind of the basics, yeah.
Yeah. I feel it's so necessary once in a while. Just go back to what am I doing? I get caught up in that. I find myself reading, I've been watching so many movies and TV shows. It's just insane, right? And after a while, they all just sort of deglaze together.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even sit through a movie anymore. I kind of ruined movies for myself for a while. And I just had to back away. I found myself reading a lot more novels and just trying to sort of remember what it is that I like rather than just letting it all become one big fuzz in my brain.
Yeah, TV, it can get kind of shallow. I don't really like the pace of most TV.
Yeah.
When you say it all just fuzz together, what do you mean?
You watch enough movies, and I'll come into the movie, I'll turn on a movie at night, just pick a random thing, and I know what's going to happen in the movie, right? There's for the most part, 99% of movies have the 3-act structure. We know that this hero is likable but flawed, and we're going to go on a journey, and by the end, they're going to come full circle. And I'm just it's to a point, you're watching the same thing every single night.
There's something where there's, I think, 7 main stories that are all the stories any ever told.
Yeah.
They can all be put into one of, I think it's 7, I don't remember.
Yeah. Once you really start to dissect it, you're yeah, this is kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I get really turned off if there's a lot of television. I'm so picky with a TV show. If I'm not totally floored by the first episode, I won't invest any more time. I'm not going to do 3 seasons of a show that right up front isn't going to get me. There's just too much to see.
Yeah, I can't stand most TV.
What have you been watching?
I just watch old stuff. I watched, I can't even remember the name. I watched a couple specific movies recently. I mean, the last thing was probably Too Old to Die Young that I think I mentioned to you. I just watched it. I binged the whole thing. It's pretty cool. Oh, and then I went back and I watched all of Nicholas Winding Refn's old movies. That's what I did recently. I watched all the Pushers, 3 Pushers. I had never seen his old movies. I had only seen kind of the newer, more glossy ones.
Yeah.
And so I went through his oeuvre after watching the series.
I love going back on somebody and I watched an old Hitchcock movie the other night, and I'm like, he's the master of suspense, and you see like Vertigo or Psycho, and you're just like demoralized by how good it is, and you're like, I'm never gonna do this. But I watched like an early Hitchcock movie, and I'm like, oh, this kind of sucked a little. It's like, oh yeah, he started somewhere. He wasn't born a flawless auteur at like 65 years old. Like he found his way.
I don't know. I've never been a big Hitchcock guy. I mean, I've seen all the big ones, I've seen all the big ones. Never been a big Hitchcock fan. I don't know why.
That's wild to me. I feel like he is pure cinema. Like,
right.
I guess I was raised, like my mom was a big Hitchcock person, and she was like, North by Northwest, let's watch this. And it's basically like a proto James Bond movie. It's Cary Grant in the 60s, like a dashing guy, cross-country chase with like a beautiful blonde, and he's like kind of evading spies. And
North by Northwest, yeah, I've seen that.
His movies are like, for me, they're sort of the ideal. They're like incredibly entertaining thrill rides, but there's also like, for the most part, deep subtext that it like makes it much deeper than just like a great spy thriller. There's like all these themes of guilt, and there's a lot of like bizarre sexual themes that kind of was right under the surface that you couldn't really talk about overtly in 1962, but it's like right under the surface. There's like a lot of homosexual themes and voyeurism. And
see, I've never gotten that deep into Hitchcock.
If you want to go deep, there's an entire field of study.
Oh, there's got to be, of course.
Yeah. But when you like really start to get into it, you see his influence on people, like people that you and I sort of love and take for granted, and you realize like how he was the guy for like forever.
Yeah, there's a handful of the big ones. Yeah, I never got really into like Fellini or just and I don't know, all the stuff that people say is the best.
I know. It's funny that we get handed down these sort of like directors or writers, and you're just sort of told like this guy.
Yeah.
And like I've gone back and I love Fellini, but there's a lot of other stuff that I watch and I'm like, this just doesn't speak to me. And I kind of feel dumb because I'm like, I guess I don't get it. I don't get it. So I guess I'm the problem.
That's part of it. And that actually happened to me recently. I've never been a big Beatles guy.
Oh, really?
And then I got this thing recently.
What is that?
It's an omnichord.
Okay.
It's basically an electric harpsichord. And then I got this like kind of impulsively. And then I got a Beatles complete chord book impulsively. And so I sat down and I was just like playing every Beatles song on this thing.
Yeah.
And immediately I was like, I began to get it. Like the way they do harmony. Because it's just sort of like everybody loves the Beatles.
Yeah.
It's like such a cliche but I didn't understand why, and I never really cared, and I thought they were just kind of pretentious and annoying, and like John Lennon's just like kind of a megalomaniac, but something clicked recently, like within the last week, and I was like, oh, I get it now. They changed harmony.
Yeah.
Like, because if you put it in the context of like where Western music was going, they just like took a hard right and just like went somewhere that no one had gone before. And I didn't understand that until recently. And I have a new appreciation for at least the harmony of the Beatles.
Yeah. I know. That's, I feel...
After, 33 years, like I finally kind of got it.
Oh, I see why this is the biggest band ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really hard to put it into context. Like I try to explain, something like the Beatles. Like I was watching like Pulp Fiction, which is probably not the same as the Beatles, like how massive the Beatles were. But I rewatched Pulp Fiction recently before Once Upon a Time in Hollywood came out. I kind of went back to like Tarantino stuff, and I always liked the movie. I thought it was cool, but kind of going back and watching it, and then like reading the Wikipedia and started to sort of get into analysis of it and kind of realizing like how much of a sea change that movie was. Like that movie changed everything. It changed distribution. Like it changed how movies were made. Independent movies became mainstream after that. And it's like the Beatles, I don't think we really can appreciate what music was like pre-Beatles and then what the Beatles did for music. So for us, it's like, oh yeah, they're like kind of crappy mom and dad music. Like my dad listens to the Beatles.
Yeah,
oh, big
exactly.
whoop.
That's
they're not
cool.
they're not cool.
Yeah.
But like, there were, riots when the Beatles came to America.
Yeah. We talk about Pulp Fiction too, but what it was is like this academic dossier that I found online because I was like really trying to search for like something that it could explain why the harmony was the way it was because I couldn't figure it out. And then I found it, and there was this like academic dossier that talked about how that previously Western music was following, like it follows the circle of fifths, which is like fifths and fourths. And that's pretty much all Western music, like classical music.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the time, classical music was taking this weird avant-garde turn with like John Cage and like prepared pianos and just like music concrete.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, and then when that was happening in the 50s, where they're like, fuck all this, like John Cage makes 422 or whatever it's called, where it's like a silent music, it's all this conceptual stuff because people are sick of Western harmony. And then the Beatles, they wrote all their songs, instead of using fourths and fifths, they didn't know how to do it. So they wrote everything with substitutions and substitutions of substitutions. So it took like what you would normally expect harmonically and just, it doesn't make any sense. And then the paper also talks about how, because they didn't know how to do it.
Yeah, like Paul McCartney famously can't read music, right? Like they're not theorists who are like, let's go in a deeper direction. They're just like figuring it out.
Yeah, so they were figuring it out. They developed a system of, instead of moving through the circle of fifths and fourths and fifths, they move in substitution movements. And the paper talked about all this really deep stuff that I'd probably butcher if I tried to explain it, but how, like when you put a melody over changes that happen in fourths and fifths, it sticks to the temperament, like the Western temperament that we're used to hearing, which means like say a G in a C chord or a G in like a G chord are actually two different Gs. It's the same note, but if you look at it, the piano, like if it's tuned right, these Gs are actually not multiples of each other. So if you're moving in fifths, you're used to hearing the temperament of the melody a certain way. But if you're moving in substitutions, if they're holding the same note and changing the chord, are you still following me?
Yeah.
Then it's actually a different note of the melody, even though it's the same note. So it like pulls you in a weird way.
My mind is blown. That's the most music theory I've ever gotten.
No, this paper that I read is just like my mind exploded. I was like, that makes complete sense.
But they kept continuing to like fuss with the formula. Like George went pretty deep into, and I don't know anything about music, but he went pretty deep into Indian music, and they came back with like totally different scales and stuff, right? Like they weren't like, oh, we have this great formula. Like John and Paul will trade off songwriting, we'll harmonize, and bang, 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 let's do 50 albums. They're like, okay, now let's do Sgt. Pepper's. And let's just put a dynamite dipped in acid and throw it into an album.
Yeah, totally. I mean, they started doing pentatonic scales, which is like Eastern scale.
Yeah. Who's your favorite Beatle?
I don't know. They're all right.
They're all right. I feel like you're a George.
Everyone likes George, right? The cool thing is to like George.
Is it? I know. I'm such a cliche. I like George too.
George Harrison's cool. He's got some good. He's the unsung hero.
Yeah, but now it's a cliche to like. I feel like now the real sort of hipster go would be like Paul. That's the unexpected.
Yeah.
Paul's great. Listen to Wings, Band on the
Paul's
Run.
a little crazy, and you can tell because they're all credited as John and Paul, but you can tell which ones are which because like John's a little emo, and then Paul McCartney's like more like a showman.
Yeah.
And he's also a little crazy. And that's why I always liked Maxwell's Silver Hammer, because I always thought that was a little glimpse into the fact that Paul McCartney is like, he probably grew up in the hood and is like, could probably flip out at somebody.
Yeah. That's the
and
thing.
It's like a control freak.
Yeah, they're
Like,
these are like street guys. We kind of forget that they, Maxwell Silver, it's a dark song.
Like, where did that come from, Paul? This is not Good Day Sunshine.
Yeah, we have Here Comes the Sun, and then Paul, what was that one? Yeah, although I think that George's solo record, All Things Must Pass, is probably the best.
Right. Yeah, it's got Isn't It a Pity?
Yeah, I love that song.
There's a really good video of Elliott Smith playing that song.
Oh, yeah, that sounds great.
He's a big Beatles guy too. And he does the same thing with his chord changes, the substitution thing. So it's a little magic trick.
Yeah, I would never sort of like see that, but now that I wouldn't intuitively say like, oh yeah, Elliott Smith, Beatles. But now that you say that,
oh yeah,
yeah,
and it's hard to explain. I never tried to explain. It made sense in my head, but moving by fourths or fifths as opposed to moving by substitutions, which is a lot of times. So like, if you know music theory, you know what a parallel minor is or a relative minor. But then so they'll take the parallel and relative minor of the subdominant and dominant and tonic, and then they'll take the parallel and relative major of that parallel and relative minor. So it goes like 2 layers of parallel and relative modes. And they basically just pick them at random. If you look at like a chart of it, but never does it go through the circle of fifths, which is what every other music does. Like all Western music does that, but they didn't do it. And I was like, that's what it is. That's why their songs sound like that.
Isn't that great? You cracked the code. Did you see that movie Yesterday?
No, I didn't see it.
Neither did I.
It
kind of looked cheesy to me, but some old guy I was talking to was like, oh, it's great. Clever premise. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll have to see it.
Yeah, I mean, clever. Okay. My dad saw it.
That's the thing. This guy was like 65. He's like my dad's age. Like, oh, it's great. I'm like, I don't know. I kind of don't trust, a 65-year-old businessman on this movie taste, but he's the paying customer.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, people get pretty dorky with the Beatles too, like Across the Universe, and it's all kind of Glee to me.
Do you ever listen to KCSN here in LA? It's like the public radio on Saturday mornings. They have Saturday Club with the Beatles, and it's a great program. Like I, driving to work on weekends and put that on, and they'll do like a Dylan hour, and they'll do the Beatles, and they'll do like a lot of bluegrass and Americana. But their Beatles show is always pretty good, and it's not. And it's like, they'll put the hits in there, but they'll also do unexpected outtakes because this guy is doing an hour of Beatles a week for the last 30 years. So like there's a lot of obscure stuff. And sometimes it goes around a theme. One of my favorites is, do you remember what recently Paul said that like he and John, or maybe all the Beatles like jacked off in a room together?
Never heard that
You
one.
didn't know that? So like in an interview like this year, Paul McCartney basically was like, yeah, like we all like jacked off together. And it made a lot of headlines. So a lot of the times the guy will make, if it's Father's Day, it's songs about fathers, right? So that week it was,
So what was the theme?
all about like songs that could be jacking off puns, but he couldn't say it on the air. And he's like, so I think you'll guess what, like it was in the news this week. And I can't think of any specific titles right now, but it was like, once you put it together, it was like.
In what context is Paul saying that? Like to who? To the New York Times? Like what?
It was like some random interview. Can you imagine how many fucking interviews that guy has done? I don't know if you listened to the Mark Maron interview with Paul McCartney, but it was like, it was awful.
Remember it.
He was just like,
it's bad.
There's nothing you can ask that guy. There's been books and interviews and movies about his life and the Beatles, and like, I think that Paul McCartney probably just got bored of saying the same answers and was like, hey, you know what? We jacked off together once. And everyone's like, that interviewer's like, I got gold, baby.
Yeah, he can just do and say whatever he wants, which is it's just scary.
One of the funniest parts of that interview, Maron asked him, he's like, a lot of people think that like they're doing their best work now. Like I asked a lot of older artists and they all are convinced that like now they're doing their best work. Like, do you feel like you're hitting your stride now? And he just goes, well, Mark, I was in the Beatles.
Yeah.
And then Maron's like, you're right. That was the dumbest question I've ever asked.
Wow. Yeah, huge, just like mega stardom.
But since he was 17 too,
Right.
like.
Yeah, all those guys. And when I read the Keith Richards book, it's just like, they were mega stars in their 20s.
Yeah.
Like driving Rolls Royces, doing whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah, I know. I think about that. Like, I went to New York right after college, and obviously the goal was get super famous, get acting and just get the career as big as you can. And obviously life doesn't work out like that. But thinking now, because only a handful of people, whether by luck or just like sheer artistic genius, become megastars that quickly. And thinking now, I'm like, if I were 22 and got a superhero movie or whatever it may have been, I might be dead. Like, I would be the biggest ass. I wouldn't have earned it or appreciated it. I would have probably ruined my life and would have had all the learning that I've had to do in public. And I'm very thankful that.
Yeah, it's tricky. You wouldn't trade your problems for someone else's if you really knew, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's wild. I spend a lot of time. I still work a couple days a week in a very high-end golf course in LA. So I spend a lot of time with very famous people, and just like peeking a little bit into their world. I'm like, wow, this guy, shows up even at a private club and everybody is staring at him. Everyone's approaching him, smiling, laughing too hard at anything they say. And I'm like, oh, I get how lonely that is. I mean, everywhere you go, people.
But then there's also like super famous people that are chill as fuck. And a lot of them, they're assholes.
I've sort of realized that like mostly the hugely successful people are really nice people. Like,
yeah.
I feel like you're not getting to the top by being a dick to people anymore.
Right.
But even like the super nice people, like it's still some layer there of they need to protect themselves and they're this brand. And when they go out in public, people expect them to act a certain way. So like, if for instance, Chris Pratt shows up and is a dick, he, even if he's feeling in a rotten mood and wants to be an asshole, we all have our moments, he kind of can't. And he's in this protective shell where he's like, can't quite ever be himself, can't quite ever trust anybody else.
Wow. Yeah, and that's why Britney shaved her head.
Oh man.
Like, fuck this.
I
burn it down.
Right? Probably the most punk rock thing she ever did. And I'm like,
that's where that came from, right? It's like you're in a cage.
Yeah, I totally understand that impulse.
Who knows? I don't know. It's not something I've ever had to deal with, but I could imagine.
One of the people that I caddy for is, Lori Loughlin, who's in the middle of this huge scandal. And just watching her, she's like a super sweet, nice lady who has been very nice to me over the years. And just watching like, the press every day just rip into her for, whatever you want to call it. It was a mistake. It wasn't murder, but it was stupid, whatever she, may or may not have done.
I don't know the story.
Oh, the college cheating scandal?
I don't know.
It was a huge, she's like on the cover of Us Weekly every week. She and her husband, as well as a bunch of other families, including like Felicity Huffman and William H. Macy, it's supposed that they basically paid a bunch of money to get their kids into college, like through the back door. and the FBI went after them and arrested them. And she's the aunt from Full House, Aunt Becky. And so like, I watching her go through this thing where like the press is just on the cover and saying that she's getting divorced and that she's drinking and all this like awful stuff. And I'm just like, I wouldn't wish that, like, I see why Britney Spears shaved her head. This is hell.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. And
yeah,
just to be under the gun like that, like.
That's one funny thing about Hollywood. Okay, you have to follow the law. Like the FBI has some level of confidentiality and like discretion when talking to the press. So, okay, deal with this problem legally with lawyers in court. But then there's this whole other part where the sensationalism and like tabloids and the public, because you're a public figure.
Yeah. It's a court of public opinion. And it's a whole different game. I feel like nowadays actors are expected to come in and, know your lines and be in shape and do your thing. But also, when you're not there, you need to cultivate an online persona and be on Instagram and be charming and have 1 million followers. And it's like it's a brand where you're like, okay, when you're getting, George Clooney in a movie, he's going to bring that sort of brand of the rich, confident, suave guy, and the online persona of somebody else. It's just...
Yeah, the court of public opinion is really just more entertainment.
And it doesn't leave and there's a lot of money on the line for these people. So it doesn't leave a lot of room for people to be real and to shave your head and tell people to fuck off and say what you actually think, because you might offend a swath of people and then you won't get that movie. And it's like, I don't know.
So they're all in trouble separately for being accused of payola in the schools?
Yeah. Like the FBI raided arrested them. And so I think...
Schools are shady.
Yeah.
Schools are so shady.
Yeah. That's the thing. If they paid $500,000 to USC through a regular donation, their kids would have gotten into school. And it's totally legal and there would have been no problem. But what happened, I guess they went to some guy who said they could get them in, and it was like around the back. And of course, that's illegal. It's like money laundering or whatever it is. But I know for a fact people who have gotten into Harvard by their parents gave $1 million. They take a gap year and then they get in the next year. And it's kind of the unwritten rule. And that's just as unethical. It's just the way it works.
Yeah. I don't know the laws surrounding it, but dude, there's no question that if you're higher on whatever economic ladder, your quality of life is going to be higher. And it's kind of like a roll of the dice a lot of times. There's this thing that I read that people who are wealthy, or the wealthier you are, there's some threshold where you start believing in meritocracy. And then people who are less economically high, they don't believe in meritocracy. So people that are on the low end of whatever economic scale, they think it's luck. And then obviously the people at the top think they deserve to be there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is funny. Of course, that's what you think.
I mean, that's kind of like the false ethos of, the Republican Party, which is a party dominated by massive corporate interests. All these rich people being I worked hard and I made $1 billion. And it's yeah, you did. You worked really, really hard. But also you're a white 65-year-old man who grew up in very advantageous conditions for you to succeed. Talk to a, Oprah, a black female billionaire, and how many it's a different story for a lot of different people.
It is too, based on the individual. It's based on the person, because you could just be, there's infinite personalities and people. So you could be, well off, famous, and deal with it in lots of different ways.
Yeah.
Or you could have been pushed, into a trust fund and gone to an Ivy League school and just be a fucking idiot.
People always say like, "Oh, you work at this fancy country club. Or is it full of assholes?" And I'm like, well,
Full of humans.
it's full of humans. I'm like, yeah. Like, I know a lot of poor people who are jerks.
Yeah.
I know a lot of rich people who are jerks. I also know a lot of rich people who are really nice, and a lot of poor people who are really nice. Like,
Right.
it's not totally indicative. There's certainly some sort of entitlement, but it's like, people are people.
But who knows? I mean, I remember something on, what's that guy's name? I forget his name. That actor from The Notebook. Ryan Gosling.
Ryan Gosling, yeah.
When he was getting really good roles and his career like took off like crazy, he like, he tries to like stay grounded by like working at a sandwich shop in downtown LA or something. And he's like, it sounds like the thing a level-headed guy would do if he felt like he was like losing his grasp on something.
Yeah.
Or like, is it Shia LaBeouf? I saw something recently where he's like giving all his money to some community center in South Central. And it kind of seemed like a little desperate, like he had lost his grasp on being human and was like desperately trying to get it back.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Shia LaBeouf obviously has had a lot of struggles, but I don't know how
I don't know. See, I'm so ignorant to a lot of this stuff.
Oh yeah, he definitely has had
read
some issue. You shouldn't, and so who cares? Like it's so gross, the culture that we're in. But yeah, like you see people who just get cut off from reality, and you're just like, I don't know how I would stay sane. I would definitely want to not live in Los Angeles and go on a farm somewhere.
Yeah.
And just
Montana.
try
a
to-
ranch in Montana.
Yeah, that would
John
be the
Mayer.
move. Is that what he does?
That's what he did when he got attacked in Playboy. And like he's like said a bunch of racist shit in Playboy. And then he just got like slaughtered by the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
And they like disappeared. And he made a super depressing album, which I really liked. And then he moved to Montana. Just like try and get out of Hollywood.
Yeah. See, that's what I was saying. Like, I'm so glad that I've dealt with my bullshit in private, because I was I'm sure a complete asshole from age. I'm sure I am, but like from age 19 to 25, I was such an idiot. And if I had any sort of notoriety, I would have destroyed my career before it began. And like the fact that I've been able to grow up in private and, mature and have all the opportunity to make my mistakes without a million people watching, and just thank God,
I'm pretty wary of drinking the Kool-Aid, whatever it is. And you should be. Yeah, the guy, one of the musicians I worked with, he's like kind of a dick. Like got some cool acting parts on HBO and stuff. And I was
cool.
like, dude, but he's like kind of a dick. Just made me think, like, I feel like people sometimes, drink the Kool-Aid, take it a little too seriously.
Because people are telling them like, you're awesome, you're on TV, all of a sudden people love you, and people are like, yeah, you're right, I am great. And it's easy to do. I have sympathy for that, but hopefully, I don't know how people stay grounded. I remember hearing, do you know who Andy Kaufman is, the comedian? So like after similar to Gosling, but with a very Andy Kaufman-esque like bent, after he got on Taxi, which is a huge sitcom in the 70s, he went to like Mel's Diner on Sunset and applied for a busboy job. So he was like a huge, huge star. It would be like, Jennifer Aniston in the 90s on Friends. And he like was bussing tables and just like as a joke, and people would be like, oh my God, are you Andy Kaufman? And he'd be like, huh? No, oh no, I get that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, sorry. And just to fuck with people for his own enjoyment, which I think is so funny. Can you imagine? Imagine seeing that and be like, is that? No. Is that? No. But
What he's saying is like, guys, this is all bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Fiona Apple, remember that?
No, what did she do?
She's like, in the 90s,
yeah.
it was like a big thing. She's like, it's all bullshit.
We as human beings, at our best, can only create opportunities. And I'm going to use this opportunity the way that I want to use it. So what I want to say is, everybody out there that's watching, everybody that's watching this world is bullshit. You shouldn't model your life about what you think that we think is cool and what we're wearing and what we're saying and everything. Go with yourself. Go with yourself. And it's just stupid that I'm in this world, but
I mean,
you're all
yeah,
very
it's
cool
not
to
real.
me,
It's
so
true,
thank you
but
very
also,
much.
you know, I've thought about that. Like, you know, Marlon Brando sent Native Americans.
Yeah, it's
things
another subversive.
yeah. And like, it's true. It is all bullshit. And like, you can't win an award for art. Like, that's the antithesis of art, is to grade it and label it, and yours is better. It's not sports. Like, that's why we love sports, because there's a clear winner and a clear loser. But in art, it's like, no, I like the Beatles. Well, I think the Beatles suck. Well, like, that's fine. But
Yeah, it's also a business, you know.
Yeah.
It's like,
But yeah, it's also a business. Like, do you want to shoot yourself in the foot? Like, if Fiona Apple's going to do that, great artistic statement, and maybe that feeds her aura of being this like renegade outsider. But also, like, do you think the label's going to like that? Do you think the people who write your checks, like, you have to sort of play the game?
yeah,
Like, everyone knows it's bullshit, but you kind of,
it's tricky.
yeah, I know.
It's nothing new. It's the oldest story. I mean, I've talked about it on this show before, on the Jerry episode, with like people monetizing art. Definitely conflict of interest, fundamentally, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, making money off of this, it doesn't make sense. At the same time, especially living in LA, seeing how much money there is out there to be made off this stuff.
No, it's crazy.
It's so tantalizing.
Yeah, it drives me crazy, especially on this show, when like Spotify recently had $1 billion budget for podcasts. Did you read that? They're going to try and privatize, like put paywalls up and start their own network. But $1 billion cash like went out to podcasters. And after I hit the charts, we didn't start making any more money. So it was like, damn. And like people like Joe Rogan and like Marin and stuff, they're making so much goddamn money. If you do the math on like the CPM, if you get like 1 million hits in a month on an episode,
Yeah,
that's more than most people make in a fucking year on one episode.
yeah.
Like they probably do like between $10,000 and $30,000 an episode.
That's wild.
Yeah. It's fucking nuts. And it's like, wow. Yeah, so seeing that, you know, it can fuck with your head. It's tantalizing. But
It doesn't
it's
it?
like, it's making my head spin.
I know. You see these actors on TV shows and they're getting like, $50,000, $100,000 an episode. They do 22 episodes and I'm just like, oh my, like what? But for the rest
Is that real? Is it real money?
Is that real money? Show it to me. Yeah, I had, you know, but it's so tantalizing. I'm like, yeah, I would sell out. I mean, that's kind of like how I produce all of my films, is like I will book a couple commercials a year and kind of get stupid amount of money for one day of work. And like, it's like selling insurance. That's what I'm doing. I'm in an insurance ad that's like airing on national TV. And in college, I was doing like avant-garde experimental theater and being like, I'll never sell out. I'm never doing a soap opera. Now I'm like, I will sell out for anything. And then I take that money and then I do my own weird little shorts and try to like, you know, develop an artistic voice and try to use that money for that. But like, you know, there's just, I guess now with the internet, now there's just so much more content, which is great, but also most of us are going to be giving it away for free for a long time until you can break in and do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you're a creative person, I think part of the formula is definitely you just have to keep making stuff and don't have too high of expectations.
Yeah. I think that expect nothing is such a good way to live your life. Like for so long, I was having high expectations, and then when I wasn't meeting it, it was just like degrading my mental health and my self-worth, because I would be like, you fall into this comparison trap where you say, why is this guy who I don't think is very talented, he's making $100,000 an episode, and I'm over here, trying to claw for whatever it is. And it just, and you, like we were saying, you lose sight of what you're doing. Right. You get caught up in all of that, and you're not like, wait, why did I like this in the first place? What do I have to say?
Yeah.
What's my story?
Yeah, you're missing the point at that point.
Yeah. I feel like LA is, we've seen it been done a million times of people getting away from themselves and then having to find them. And I love that redemption, but like everyone loves a comeback, but.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's you're not thinking about it in really a nuanced way. I mean, do you really want, you don't want that person's life.
Yeah.
You don't want their problems. You just, I don't know. Is it a level playing field? I don't know. That's the truth. I don't know.
I remember I think about this all the time. Like I think about if I get, and Jim Carrey always, speaking of Andy Kaufman, he always talks about when I was the number one movie star in the world and doing all of my greatest dreams realized, and I was completely miserable. Yeah. And I've heard of that so many times, and I've kind of come to the realization that I need to be happy right now where I am with who I am, because this is all that I'm guaranteed. If I die tomorrow and get hit by a bus and I never got to write my own show for HBO, then what? This was all for nothing? But no, I have to be happy with who I am, where I am right now. And ironically, accepting who you are and where you are and truly knowing yourself, I think that creates better work, which will get you there. It's like this Zen sort of if you let go, you'll receive it. And it's like, if you really start to investigate who you are and why you're doing this, and forget about the money and the whatever other accoutrements that come with fame, right, then you will start to do real honest work. And I think that will resonate with people, rather than trying to make the album or make the show that you think people will like. If you make the show that's true to Cameron, that's
for
what,
sure.
That's what people respond to.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's easy to get caught up with all the distractions.
It's kind of like the artist's job to just constantly investigate themselves and question the motives.
Yeah. And then with art too, it's your privilege and it's your curse to be able to make art. And that should be what it's about. So, I don't know. I mean, so many, Van Gogh, died penniless. So many artists, but he did the deal, but he did his work. So
yeah, I don't know.
Do the work.
Just do. I think that's it. Just do the work. Just do the work. I have to tell myself that. Just keep doing it, and it's not. And I've heard it before that you really need to love the process. And I think for a long time, I didn't love the process, and I was just trying to convince myself that I did so that I could love the result, which would, be fame and wealth.
Sure.
But you really need to figure out how to fall in love with the process. And that's, again, ironically, what will give you, I believe, the success when you really are invested in making stuff good.
Right. Yeah, it kind of makes me think about gratitude too, because it's easy. I'm guilty of it too. Just not realizing how good you have it. You know what I mean?
That's huge. That's absolutely huge.
You don't know. You can't compare yourself to someone with a ton of money, or you can't. If you really think about it, that's pretty it's not nuanced enough to make any sense. But lucky to I'm lucky to have a roof over my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
This is something I've really been trying to work on is gratitude. I think it's so important to living a full and a happy life. And one of the things is like, you can be grateful for the way the sun is coming through the trees right now and like playing with the light. It's like, but also, and I hate to like try to boost yourself up, but like I look at the things that I've made and the things that I've done. And when I'm like, how come I'm not running this show? Or like, how come I'm not selling the script? I'm like, look at all, like I've done a ton of cool stuff. I've been able to do all this, and it may not be Hollywood A-list, but like the super fun projects that I'm proud of, and working with friends and from the ground up and doing all these things. And like, it's what I love to do. And the process of it was so wonderful, to make these things, even like working with you and editing. And then when you send me the music, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Cam's music laid in, all this, like, It was so exciting. And that's the beauty of it. Not the afterwards you get an award. It's like, no. Making it is the fun stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
Like that's the glory.
Yeah. It's definitely, it's like a part of your brain, different part of your brain, like being creative and then like appreciating creativity. It's easy for those to commingle when they don't necessarily have to. I guess they both have to exist at the same time, but like the muscle to like, I remember in the 50 Cent movie, Get Rich or Die Trying, he's like rapping other people's lyrics. And then he says something like, well, it's a different part of your brain to writing your own. It's a different muscle that,
Yeah. I know. I hate falling into this trap, but like I obviously will get super jealous of other people's success. Yeah. And they're on their own journey. They're living their own life. Like I'm not living their life. I started at different places I shouldn't be, but I'll find myself getting successful of things that I don't even want, where like a buddy of mine is show running a Marvel like superhero show. And he's a great guy, and he's super smart and really talented, and he deserves all the success that he's getting. But I'm over there like, man, I'm over here. I still work a couple days a week at the country club. Also something I should be grateful for, that I have this like super easy, awesome job that pays me cash. But then I had to back up. I'm like, I don't even like Marvel movies. Like, I don't like superhero movies. Why am I jealous of this guy doing this thing that he likes that I wouldn't even want in my perfect world? Let him, he's on his own, and I'm sure he has his own problems.
Yeah.
Let him live his life. It has nothing to do with me.
Part of it too is like, you'll see stuff like that or something, and it's like, well, how did they do that? And then you try and like figure it out. There's something to be said about that too. Like if you want something, figuring out how to do it. Yeah, it's a paradox, I think.
Yeah. But also the worst thing is that like,
how did he get that? How did he get that?
I study that, like,
magic trick. How'd you do that trick?
I try to figure out like, how did you get that agent? How did you make that movie? And like there's no right answer. It's like,
it comes from,
they have the will to just do it.
Yeah, I guess asking the questions just comes from insecurity. And I don't know, I'm so bad. Like the marketing part of my brain is just so bad. That like, I just don't care. Like, I just don't care.
Marketing yourself always feels gross.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I do. And self-promotion is like always just makes my skin crawl. I'm still trying to figure out. But also like, I don't know how to do it. Like, what am I going to do? Put an Instagram post and hope that a couple people watch my thing? Like,
no idea. When I was working really hard on music, like maybe 5 years ago, I just thought, fuck it. Like, I'm just going to do, like, here's what I want. I want an LP and I want it on vinyl, and I don't want to worry about anything else. And this is a crazy goal that is going to be hard to do, and probably nobody will care. But it's like, but I did it. And then people go, well, how the fuck did you do that? I was like, I don't know. I just kind of went crazy.
But you did it.
Yeah, but I did it.
Yeah.
So it's like from the outside, someone saying, oh, that just got handed to you or whatever, or like, oh, I want that. It's like, shit, man, I don't know. I have no idea. Then go do it. Like, seriously, go fucking do it.
Yeah.
Because like I was dead serious. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's that kind of attitude. Like I feel like as artists, I can live in this like prison of like, you know, perfection, and what do I want to do? Is this right? And like there's a million decisions to make, I'm sure, like when you're making an album, but when you're making a movie, there's a million decisions on each scene, how to cut it, music, like lighting, everything. And just
problem solving.
Yeah. And you need to just have that backbone to see it through. I have probably 20 scripts with like anywhere from 13 to 70 pages that are just abandoned on my computer that I've just like...
That you spent countless hours on.
Yeah.
Right.
But like you said, like
I can't imagine in making movies, like the amount of like moving parts is staggering.
There's infinite possibilities. You could just tinker forever.
One thing I like about it though, the bigger shoots that I've been on, is you kind of feel like you're like getting away with something. Like you're not, like this isn't supposed to be happening. Like we're like a renegade team who's like doing this mission.
Yeah.
That's sick. I like that.
I love that feeling. A lot of like the stuff that I do, these short films that I've been producing, like there's no security, there's no permits, and it's like running around LA and grabbing shots, and it feels like we're pulling a prank in like high school. We're like, hey, come over here. Oh, okay, do it. Oh, yeah. We got it. And then like run away and back to the van. And it's so the adrenaline is great. And it like, you know, it makes everybody closer. Like, we got it. We did it. We got away with it.
You're creating, you know, you're like giving birth. It's like you're doing something that without your will, it wouldn't happen. And you just have to, it's like, I don't know, that's fun to me.
Yeah, you just got to finish it like that. I don't know if you ever saw on like my Instagram or whatever, but I did this like surf travel doc.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I wanted to ask about New York too.
Oh yeah, sure. That was something that sort of came about organically. My buddy, he was leaving and going to Baja for like 6 months, and he was like, come with me. And I'm like, I can't just screw off. I need to make a movie. And he's like, then make a movie. And I'm like, well, he like called me on it. And I was like, well, like how? He's like, I don't know. You're the film guy. Like, make a movie. So like, I, you know, bit by bit, just collected all this footage and then came home and edited it all together. And, you know, I didn't have any music. I reached out to my musician friends and they let me use their stuff and, you know, all this. And I finally like put it out there, and then this random distribution company saw it online and was like, hey, we like this. Like, we'll print a DVD of it. And
oh, cool. I figured you did that yourself.
No, it was this random company that like found it. I sent it to them. They liked it. They're out of Texas. And they made a DVD and put it online. And you know what? I was at home this weekend and like I was going through my parents' office, like, I don't know what I was doing, looking for books or something. And I saw like 10 copies of the DVD that they bought. And that like made me so happy to see my parents, who are like financial analysts, like looking at my like bought a bunch of my surf movie. Like, I was like, oh, they are proud of me. But like, I just had to do it. And if you are doing the work, like people will be interested. And then all of a sudden, that was handed to me. Some guy reached out to me on the internet and made a DVD and made a cover for it and put it in a DVD case. But like, also like I did it. Like I did a bunch of work and then that happened. So if you're doing work, things will break your way.
It's not a narrative short film. What is it?
That was pretty fun for me to try to do. I sort of imposed a narrative, almost like I kind of called it to myself, which is so pretentious, but I called it like a video memoir.
Okay.
Where it was a trip I took with my friend, and I was sort of at a crossroads in my life. And I wrote a journal while I'm on the trip, just like reflections and thoughts, and then I sort of laid in a voiceover over our adventure, and like we're going to different surf spots and we're going to churches and we're seeing the Baja 1000 and we're meeting all these Mexicans and expats and then like I'm sort of talking about what I'm going through at the time as this is happening. So I sort of imposed a narrative in some way, and it's also about my buddy, who is like a very interesting character who like lives out in the wild for half the year, and he's just like completely off the grid dude. So it's kind of about him too, and just his philosophy on life, which is compelling. But also for me, like I was really out there like trying to search for something and get answers. And the interesting thing was that I never, you go on these journeys like wanting an epiphany to like, what do I want to do with my life? Who am I? And it never happened. And then like 2 days after I got back, I like had this sort of mental breakdown in my girlfriend's apartment and had a true like spiritual epiphany where I can only describe it like after you do shrooms and you're just like, you see the inner workings of life and you see through all of this bullshit that we put on life, and you're just like, oh, and I like had my epiphany, but not on camera. Like after I'd come back, it sort of slept for 2 days, and it was, and then I was like, okay, so that's my story.
Did you add that into the film?
Yeah,
sure.
My fiance was girlfriend at the time was with me when I was sort of having the like. I like cried for a day straight. It was the most bizarre thing that had ever happened to me. I'm like,
what a trip.
It was, I really like, I was walking around LA. I like gave all my money to a homeless person. Like I truly was like, I saw every person. Like I was like looking at people and crying, just being like so happy. I'm like, there's a person, like I love you. Like truly seeing people for human beings.
And this was all just because of this sort of like existential thing that was going on with you based around this trip. It wasn't like you took a bunch of shrooms.
Yeah, no, it was totally organic. Like I had, been in a weird place.
Saturn's return, maybe.
Possibly. I should have checked the astrological chart that day. But so it was pretty cool, I'll be honest. And it made me feel a lot more comfortable where I am. And it also kicked off like a more exploratory sort of way of living, exploring myself. But in the movie, my girlfriend, she was the one who was there with me. So I had her interviewing me on camera like later and just sort of like to kind of try to get at like what happened.
I actually did DMT for the first time a few months ago.
How'd that go?
And it was more, well, it wasn't like, was that Gaspar Noé movie where the guy's like smoking DMT in Japan? It wasn't like that. It was very unlike that.
Really?
It was like a ceremony. It was like a pagan ceremony for an entire weekend. And I had some moments similar to the one it sounds like you're talking about.
Is that like ayahuasca?
It was ayahuasca, yeah.
So ayahuasca is DMT?
Yeah, the dimethyltryptamine is what's in the root. And then they've been sipping that stuff down in wherever, Peru, for hundreds and thousands of years.
And I've heard that's helpful for like what I was talking about, sort of like investigating your sort of demons, or whatever you want to call it, your trauma, your baggage, and like kind of shining a spotlight on what's going on inside.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it can shake you up, What I thought of afterwards was like, okay, say you take like a habanero pepper, like a ghost pepper, and you eat this pepper. Now all of a sudden, like, your body is like, you're going for a ride, right?
And away
you're going for a spicy journey.
Go.
Yeah. Instead of like a pepper saying, hey, I'm going to fuck you up for like a few minutes, you'll be all fine. The ayahuasca says, hey, I'm going to kill you. And then 6 hours later, we're coming back. So you'll like die but then you're okay. So instead of a spicy journey, it's like takes it that much farther, where this thing just says, "Yep, we're going. You're out of here. Game over."
You
and then you come back.
Thought that you were dead.
I feel like that's the closest thing that I can compare it to. Or say, like, if you've ever had a dream where you die, that's the closest thing I can compare it to, really. And that's no coincidence, because the molecule is it exists in a lot of different things.
Really?
But the only time it's ever released in an animal's brain, the only time you ever use it is when you die, or when you're born. So that, in a fact alone, is trippy as fuck. Whatever this molecule is, they call it like the spirit molecule or something. So it really puts you in touch with bigger issues.
I know. I'm fascinated to try it, but now I'm terrified.
Yeah, it was a lot different than eating an eighth of shrooms in college and like wandering around in the suburbs.
Yeah.
It was a lot. It was a legitimate pagan ceremony.
And did you do this in the States?
Yeah.
And so, but you like when it's a serious thing. Like, did you
They're dead
vomit?
serious.
And
I didn't vomit. I have a strong stomach,
yeah,
and I was comfortable, And I think a lot of the vomiting is like psychological.
okay,
So if you start to resist, the ride,
yeah,
then your body starts to want to throw up.
really,
And it's actually a little creepy. The people that run the thing,
sure.
like they kind of like when people throw up, and that's a little creepy to me. They're like,
It's not at all like indicative of trying to get out some things from inside, or like
I think they think so.
They think so.
Yeah, but to me, is like, man, I don't know. In a lot of ways, part of the time, I felt like I was in some kind of like ancient, like some ancient hospital or something.
Yeah.
Where there's all these people that are sick, and then like the people are coming around, kind of like nurses, like checking on everybody, and everyone's just going on riding this immense tsunami.
Was it scary?
Was it scary? No, just anticipating it was scary.
Yeah. I don't know how
What a
good I
trip.
am on drugs anymore. The last time I did shrooms, it was not I'm glad I did it, but I wouldn't describe it as a positive experience.
Me too.
And the last time I even tried Molly, which is just like a serotonin dose, like the come up for me, I kind of freaked out a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think
I know
that's
what you
just
mean.
supposed to be like a pure happy feeling. And I was just like, I don't know, like I was out of control, and I just kind of bugged out. But like I've looked at and read a lot about ayahuasca. I don't drink alcohol anymore, and I know that ayahuasca has proven to be like a very good way to remain sober from alcohol, because it will like sort of, from what I understand, kind of bring up the demons, if you will, that caused you to drink to excess.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've heard, a lot of people who had drinking problems no longer really felt the need to drink after sort of pulling out all the emotional viscera from their life and being able to explore it on ayahuasca. But again, I don't know. I'm kind of terrified to try it, because I feel like I'm not good at drugs anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. If it wasn't for the lady who runs these retreats, she apparently has PhDs in medicine and like left Western medicine to do these retreats. And they have to kind of screen you, obviously, so like the DEA doesn't come knocking on their door.
Oh, really?
So I really try. I feel like this, they say set and setting, and that's really true.
Yeah.
Like I said, it wasn't like wandering around a golf course in the suburbs.
Was it in the desert?
No, it was up in Calistoga in the Bay Area.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's useful, like this sort of, you hear about experimental psychologists using LSD or mushrooms for therapeutic reasons. And like, it makes a lot of sense. And it should be, I think that we were sort of on that path before all these psychedelics became totally illegal. And I really wish that it were more acceptable to try to use it for a therapeutic. Obviously, there's going to be abuse. People going to see a Fish show, you're going to try to abuse it, but you know.
But the reason I thought of it was because the second night, because you do it more than one night, and the second night I just like broke down and I was crying the whole trip. And I was just like crying for like hours.
I've heard that.
Like, Jesus, all this stuff like just, you're not even aware of, just like comes up to the surface somehow. You said that and I was like, that just reminded me of that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was I felt so connected to every other person and even like living thing. Like,
We were drinking that Baja water.
I guess so. I don't know what it was. It was coming back. It was, you know, I was living in the bush, like living in the desert for 6 weeks and then coming back into LA. It was like kind of a shock to the system, to be honest. And I don't know, but there's also something very religious. There's something very biblical about Baja. It's, you know, the desert, but it's also the sea. And
I used to go down there on surfing trips as a kid.
oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
I love it down there.
We used to go every Christmas with my dad and my sister.
Where'd you guys go?
I don't remember. My dad's friend had a surf camp,
That's sick.
and we would all go, like maybe a dozen or two people in vans and camp on the beach.
That is amazing.
I was maybe like 10, 11, 12, I think were the years. So I don't
Do you still surf at all?
No, got big into skateboarding.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
And I was scared of the ocean for a long time too.
Why?
Because I got held under as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know so many people that like wanted to get into surfing and they had one bad day and they're just like, I'm done.
Picking sand out of your eyeballs.
Oh man, it is the worst. Like, you know that feeling when you're held under and it's like a second too long because you know, you've been swimming in the ocean your whole life, I'm sure, and you get under and you're under and then you can get your way up. But if you go over the falls and you're getting pummeled, you're down there and it's like each second feels like an eternity and then you panic.
Yeah.
And
Mother
that's
Nature
terrifying.
just has her way with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not unlike psychedelics.
I know. You really, man, I've been trying to work on control, like releasing control and sort of, what was the word? I have this great yoga teacher. She's like an American Indian who also has a degree in psychology and she's like a yogi. So she's like a full one-stop shop for like holistic healing and a surrender. She was talking to me about surrender and like, is there any greater metaphor for surrender than you're getting tossed by the ocean and you're just like, well,
Yeah.
I have no control here.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling. It's good to get out of control once in a while in a healthy way.
You still serve?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I got really into it. Yeah, I tried doing it growing up. I got really into it when I moved out here. And now it's like kind of my main hobby.
Vice.
But yeah, especially like quitting drinking. You need something to get you to like, you know, that feeling of not being in control, like taking off at Point Doom on like a head-high day into rocks. You're like, I like this feeling.
Yeah, people are addicted to surfing.
It really is such an addictive thing. It's so, you know, it's also like gambling because it's like one big wave, like, okay, I'll go in, one more. And then you can be out there for like hours at a time. And the next day, oh, it's good, I got to go. It's very addictive.
I do. I'm still scared of the ocean a little bit.
Really?
Yep.
But not sharks.
Not really, no. Well,
Just
all
getting
of it.
held under. Yeah. It's terrible. It's all
Jellyfish.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my sister got stung really bad. And yeah, it's scary.
Yeah. That's the allure.
But yeah, people are addicted to it. They love it.
Yeah. It's definitely, I feel like we all sort of have to have something that is your thing. I'm like, this is definitely a healthier choice for me. Gets me in shape. Yeah. My fiance knows where I am.
Yeah.
It's all good.
So when you were in New York, did you graduate college or you left early?
No, I graduated. I was pretty young for my grades. I graduated at 21. And then...
Why? Were you accelerated genius?
Definitely not. My parents just started me early, and they thought I could handle it.
From the jump?
From the jump. And they just were like, you can handle it. And then like what was crappy for me was in middle school when everybody else was like going through puberty and like half the guys were like had chest hair and I was like a complete late bloomer. And also like, you know, when I went to a boarding school in Virginia. I'm from Boston. I went to a boarding school in Virginia when I was 13, which is like, I was like a young 13 too. And there were kids in my grade who were 15 and had like fully developed pecs and like lats. And I was like a prepubescent 13-year-old. And I was like, can I please stay back a year just to let my body like, and then they're like, no, you're fine. And so I went to this boarding school in Virginia and I was like so over my head. There were common showers. So I was like showering with 18, 19-year-old seniors, like grown men. And I was just like, oh, please.
Wow. It's probably a good education though, right?
It was a great education, really good education. And I think it made me pretty fiercely independent to like move out of my parents' house when I was 13. It's like an old English style boarding school. I was in the, third form and I wore a coat and tie. But it had this weird culture clash where it was like in the middle of rural Virginia. So like my roommate freshman year had like a Confederate flag on the wall.
Oh boy.
And it was like very like old Southern. And I was like, what is this?
Oh, I went to a private, I wasn't a Mormon school. It was a private religious school for many years. And yeah.
What, was it like Quaker, like a friend's school or something?
No, I forget. A bunch of other random people went there too. Like Jerry, who was on the podcast.
Uh-huh.
He went there too when we were all little kids in the Bay Area. Yeah, private school. I mean, I'm glad now that I had such a good education. But yeah, private school is weird.
Yeah.
Really weird.
Yeah.
Then where'd you go to college?
And then I went to college back up in Massachusetts at Holy Cross. And, I was like a theater guy and an English major. So I was like doing theater stuff and writing, writing for the school paper, writing poetry, doing all the school plays and like doing like the main stage shows, which were like Chekhov, but also doing like bizarro experimental theater pieces in the black box with my friends.
Theater kid.
Yeah, big time. And it's not like a huge theater school. It's not like, Tisch or whatever, but it was a really good program. It's just a liberal arts college, but they had like 3 theater professors, probably 15 theater majors. So it was like super hands-on and it was really a great education.
And then New York.
Yeah, and then New York. I did like a Shakespeare festival in New England that summer, and then I pretty quickly moved to New York to make it.
Yeah.
And
what does that mean?
Back then it meant be this, movie star, drive around in a Bentley. Now it means, I don't know, not having a day job. Or actually even having a day job and just still making, like if you make things, you've made it.
Yeah.
But I got it like super into UCB in New York.
Yeah.
And so I was doing that a ton and still doing like acting classes and UCB and waiting tables on the Upper East Side.
What do you do from there? Then you like become like a road comic or like you get an SNL audition or something. That's like the dream, right?
Yeah, I feel like SNL was definitely the dream, but also like at that time, it was 2008, like the UCB in New York was really exploding. So like everybody on like The Office, I was seeing for $5, like Ellie Kemper and Zach Woods, Thomas Middleditch from Silicon Valley, like all these comedy people, Kumail Nanjiani, TJ Miller, John Mulaney, and like all these comedy people I was seeing all the time, like hanging out with. But it felt like it was back in high school in Virginia where like I didn't fit in. These were all these like comedy nerd people and it was very cliquey and very political.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to, I just like being in that setting again, my alert went up, and I was like, no, not this again. I don't like this. And I kind of didn't ingratiate myself fully with that community, because like there were people that were at that theater 7 nights a week, and that was their life. And then they were just really, really into it. And then eventually now they're all, not all, but I have friends who are like wrote on SNL and got onto shows and stuff.
Yeah.
But it just, I don't know, something about drinking that Kool-Aid of the, I was like, I'm not going to do that.
Do it your own way.
Yeah.
But who doesn't? I mean, I don't know. It just seems like I don't watch SNL anymore. It's kind of annoying. I don't know. The people that are on there are just like, it's ridiculous, dude.
Yeah, I
Or
don't.
like, who's that one guy, BJ Novak? That guy seems like such a dick. Like,
Doesn't he?
He's like the quintessential masshole in my head. I've never met him, but
Yeah, he has this air about him that there's sort of, and I'm sure he's perfectly nice, but he seems like a really arrogant, smarter than you kind of guy.
I could get in trouble. Say some.
If BJ Novak is out there, tell him I'll fight him.
Yeah,
he can fight
for sure.
me.
I don't know. Yeah, I have this idea of like Jewish masshole guy who's like a total dick and rich.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, maybe he's a perfectly pleasant, like gives money to children's foundations. I don't know. But he definitely has that sort of arrogance, probably because he's been so, I think that his story, he just like, from the womb was successful, and he's just super smart and super successful.
Yeah.
So he just like has that little smirk where he's like, yeah, I'm better than you. And I know it. I don't know. Who knows?
You didn't write it out until the UCB thing.
Yeah.
I mean, could get like, you could probably get really clicky. You like get sick of it.
Insanely
quick.
so. Yeah. I got pretty burnt out. I wrote an original play with my buddy from UCB down there. We did this comedic musical called Filibuster the Musical. And it was like this political, silly play that we put on. And, I was like, this is it. Like, this is going to be, I thought it was really funny. It was really funny. And I was like, this is going to launch us. Because, like, Mindy Kaling did a play about Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, and it, like, blew up, and that started their career. And, like, so I was like, okay, this is what it's going to be. And we did it. It was great. Everybody saw it, loved it. But, like, SNL didn't call.
Yeah.
So, I kind of was like, all right, I'm going to move back home. And at one point I was like, I'm joining the Navy. That was my plan. I was like, I need some discipline. I'm out here being an artist. Like, this isn't working. I got to learn how to be an adult. And I was like, I went to a Navy recruiting office.
No shit. Wow.
And it was like, I got to sign up.
I'm lost.
That's what I should have said. I'm lost. I need help. I need a father figure. Please.
Some structure.
I need somebody to yell at me. And that's literally what it is. The Navy recruitment should just be, are you lost? That and Scientology. And so my friends from college came down to New York and like took me out and got me really drunk. And then we're just like, all right, buddy, like you're not joining the Navy. And they were really sweet. And they were like, you're our only friend that does anything creative. We think you're really funny and really talented. Go to LA and like try stand up and just go to LA. New York's not for you. And so I went home for a summer and sort of made some money and then came out to LA. The Navy recruitment guy called me for like a year and a half after that.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to buy a Nissan.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, just checking in. Jerry from the Navy. Still want to make a huge mistake? Because it's like a 6-year commitment or something. I think I would just be getting out now. I talked to my buddy who
walked into that dealership, just use the bathroom, man.
Oh, man.
Now they'd call me.
I just had to go pee. They find you. It's like if you ever Google like health insurance and you have to put in yourself, you will get hit up 3 times a day for the rest of your life. Like, hey, this is Cindy from Health Insurance Net. And you're just, But yeah, so I moved to LA and sort of got in my groove. I liked it a lot more than New York and got into a different sort of cult acting class and started booking commercials pretty soon. And that was like, gave me a lot of breathing room to just like not be so desperate for cash. Because that was the other thing. In New York, I was working like 60 hours a week at a restaurant. I was making really good money, but it's like, you know, New York, you just spend it. And I was getting pretty depressed with.
Where are you living? In the city?
I was, my first year was on the Upper West Side. And then I moved in with this girl in the East Village. And then we broke up. I moved into Brooklyn. And I was in like Williamsburg for the last couple of years with like two avant-garde poets in like the shittiest apartment ever constructed.
I thought about doing an acting class.
It's great. I recommend it to anybody.
Really?
I think that like doing a UCB intro level improv class is like just so beneficial for life skills, learning how to just talk in public, learning how to relax a little bit for social interactions and any sort of public speaking. Like I recommend it to no matter what your profession. Just like learning how to be in your body and be comfortable.
Yeah. Do you do open mics? Like, do you do?
So yeah, I did a bunch of open mics when I first came here. Like that summer back in Boston before I moved out, I was doing a bunch of open mics and just doing terrible comedy. And I moved out here. But like by the end of that summer, I thought I was pretty good because like in Boston, there's like 10 stand-ups and you're like going around. When you're doing stand-up comedy in a random bar in Boston, the patrons of the bar are like, oh, cool. Wow, there's a comic. And they'll like laugh and give you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
So it kind of was like, I can do this. And I came to LA and I did it for the first few months. And it was the most demoralizing activity you can do. Driving around to all the open mics in LA. It's like the same 15 comics that don't want to laugh. And, you know, there's like 3 homeless crazy people that sign up and just yell at the mic.
Oh man.
And you know, it's just, or you go to like the big place and there's like a lottery of 150 people and you don't get picked and you just drive all over Hollywood and West Hollywood all night doing these different spots and waiting and watching the same people tell the same bad jokes. And then you get up and you tell your bad jokes and nobody laughs. And you're like, this is a massive waste of time.
Yeah, what the fuck?
It was so bad.
Man, that's crazy. That's so crazy. Any other like entry level position with something that's not attached to entertainment, they'd at least give you a few bucks.
Yeah.
I did 2 different internships in large format recording studios. Internships. Okay. That's
Unpaid.
crazy. Unpaid.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they talk about how like, you know, even the big agencies, if you're in the mailroom or whatever, they're paying you peanuts and expect you to live in LA and work from like 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. 5 days a week. And like, there's all this push for diversity in television and film. And it's like, well, that has to start at these agencies because the only people who can afford to do that are rich people, and that means mostly white people. So if you're going to make the corporate side of Hollywood all the same type of person with rich parents who can pay their rent, then you're not really going to achieve diversity.
Right.
If the decision makers are all Ivy League kids with rich parents. So I don't know. It's so gross.
Yep. It seems like it. Yeah. They want a nice college, even for you to work in the mailroom.
Yeah. And they won't pay you anything.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy.
Anyway, I moved here. I started doing class at the Beverly Hills Playhouse, which is like a really fascinating conversation in and of itself. It's an acting class in Beverly Hills. This was like famously a hotbed of Scientology in the 70s and 80s or something.
The class was?
Like the acting school. The guy who started it was like a huge Scientologist and like would kind of like lure people, and he's also like sleep with his female students and like but that had all died out by the time I was there, but you could still see remnants of that ethos and like very much so like in the way that UCB was like very cliquey and culty, but like every acting class necessarily is.
And probably pretty competitive too. Because you hear stories of people on SNL and it's like they talk about like the writing, how they'll like write all weekend. And then it's like you have to present your sketch and then everybody's going to judge it. And it's probably going to get thrown away.
Yeah.
And like, so there's this like weird competitive aspects of like competing to be the funniest one. And it's like, that's why it's kind of obnoxious too. That's why those comics seem obnoxious to me because they're competing to be funnier than each other by just being more obnoxious.
Yeah. I mean, that was part of what turned me off from UCB is that like, yeah, it was just this attitude of the competition to be the funniest, but also like I think at that time at UCB, it was very comedy nerd, sort of thing where like these sort of non-traditional kind of geeky guys were the kings. And I present like more of an athletic leading man type.
Yeah.
So like I also felt this added like judgment of like, who is this jock who thinks he can be funny because we're like the hilarious nerds and he doesn't get our Star Trek references. And I'm like, you guys are really kind of jerks. Not everybody, but like there was a good amount of people who like really let it be known that like they didn't want me to hang out.
Man, it's rough.
Yeah, it's hard being a white male. But actually the Beverly Hills acting class, that was way more, that was like the opposite where people were like so supportive and like, tell me about your, like I saw so many people talk candidly about like the horrible things happen to them in childhood and like really investigate. And that was like the total California, like, no, it's all good. Like be your best self.
Use it.
And it was like, so, and when you're in that acting class, like you're in it and you're really, and like when you take any, like if I brought you there, you would be like, Matt, these people are insane. But when you're in it, you're like, man, that's so good. Yeah. Like that's true and raw.
Yeah. I don't know that much about acting, but the few times I've had to do it, I'm pretty good at it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see you have a very natural, interesting way about you. I feel like you have an interesting timing, which is, I think counts. Like I love watching performers that just, you don't know the way they're going to deliver like a line. Like they just have a unique way of being.
There's this one part I always think about it when I think about acting.
Yeah.
It's like it's in what's the Marlon Brando where they're all wearing the leather jackets and they like go to the small town and he falls in love with the
wild
girl.
one.
The wild one, yeah. There's this one part at the end where it's all shit has hit the fan.
Yeah.
And the guys take the girl and he's got to go get her back. And he runs into the frame and then he just like stops. You could tell that he was just like doing his acting thing. And I got to watch it again. He just like stops, he just kind of looks around, and then he just like keeps going. I don't know if you've seen that, but if you've seen the movie, there's this one part. He's like a cat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, you just want to keep looking, even though he's not doing shit. And he just totally steals it. I always think about that. He just stole it, just like with a look.
Yeah. He's like the most fascinating person to watch for that reason. Like you just don't know what he's doing. And you're like, what is he?
Yeah.
What is he doing?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to...
You can't quite get a read on it. Like you don't know what he's going to say, like you said.
Yeah. It's just like there's shit going on in that guy's head, but I don't know what it is. And it's just his emotions are all over the place.
That's very like old school acting. Like Brando and James Dean.
I have kind of a hot take on James Dean that he sort of did one thing really well. And I feel like if his career were able to go on longer, he would have been exposed for like just kind of doing the torn up, kind of youth and chaos. And he does it really well. And it was explosive for the time. But I'm like, I don't think he would have aged like into his 30s.
No, he probably, he died young.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But he's just a kid, He's like 20s, in his early 20s or something.
Yeah.
I probably would have done the same thing if someone asked me to like act.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now that I'm like, when I get older, I really respect really subtle performances. Like when I was like 17, 18, watching On the Waterfront and Streetcar Named Desire, I was like, that's the kind of acting I want to do, where it's just like all explosives and tearing off your shirt. And now like I really appreciate like subtle, sort of nuanced, small performance of, actors.
Yeah. I don't pay too much attention to acting. I'm always thinking about the filmmaking. Unless it's bad acting, then I immediately
That's the thing.
am making fun of it.
It really ruins anything you're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, if somebody's doing a great job acting, you shouldn't really notice.
Right.
You're not saying like, wow, that's good acting.
Yeah.
Maybe after the fact, you're like, wow, I'm moved. That was a good job. But you shouldn't be like, look at him shooting tears out of his eyes. What an actor. Look at all that emotion.
So how'd you get hooked up with an agent from when you first moved out here?
Man, it was the weirdest thing. I had a buddy who was a commercial casting director, and he brought me in for an audition, and I'm just waiting in line. And like, I don't know how this happened, but I just bumped the guy next to me and I was like, hey, so like I'm on this audition. It was one of my first auditions. I'm like, but I don't have an agent. How do you get these auditions through an agent? And he's like, oh, well, why don't you meet my agents and I'll introduce you? And like, he was a complete stranger, just the nicest guy in the world. I don't even know his name to this day. And I went in and I met his agents and they liked me. And then they sent me out on a bunch of commercials. And I also did, right when I got here, I got wrapped up in this really bizarre, I guess technically it was a reality television show that was pitched to me like I was deep into improv still, and it was pitched to me as like an improv comedy. And I soon found out it was a ghost hunting reality show called Ghosts in the Hood, and I was the white guy, and it was an all-black ghost hunting team.
Sick.
So like I spent
There's like a double meaning there.
Right?
You were the ghost in the hood.
I was the ghost. I know. And like they wanted, I thought it was gonna be like all a farce, and it was like doing hard comedy, like, but they were like, no, Matt, we really needed to be scared of the ghost in this moment. And I'm like, no. Because after the first iteration of it, they showed me the pilot, and it was just like a straight up reality show, and it looked like an idiot who like believed in ghosts, and and then so I was like, oh, you guys are just trying to make me look like a fool. So I like kind of sabotaged we had to do like, it was at like Spike TV and all these other networks, and we kept having to make pilots for it. And I just kind of like made it a joke. And then eventually they just fired me.
Yeah.
They were like, we need somebody who can do the job we asked them for.
Probably an okay decision.
Yeah.
To not have been the ghost in the hood.
I think it's fine. The other guy, some of them have had some success, but yeah, I've kind of, I guess maybe I'm realizing I have an attitude problem where I'm like, I don't want to do that bullshit. Like the last big commercial I shot was like a really cheesy insurance commercial, and the director wanted me to do the big broad smile and like, man, this insurance company sure is great. And I just wouldn't do it. Like I was always doing it sarcastically, like, hey, this insurance company sure is great. And the director like did a bunch of like TV, and he was like a cool young guy, and he like got it. He like came over to me, he's like, Matt, like I know this is lame. And there's like 10 suits behind him. Hey, make sure this kid does it. Here's your note. Act like you're in an insurance commercial. And I was like, got it. Like, you're not above this. Just be in an insurance commercial. There's nothing wrong with it.
What a trip.
It was, but he was basically like, stop being an asshole and play along.
Yeah.
You're not in acting class.
So did it air?
Oh yeah, that aired a bunch. That's
crazy.
Yeah.
Right, so you were in line just for like what? I mean, how do you even find out about casting calls in the first place?
My roommate.
My knowledge of this is so rudimentary. I have no idea.
I still don't understand how it all works. My roommate at the time was a casting director, and he told me to come in for this audition. But like, I have a commercial agent, and they're great. But getting a theatrical agent has been so elusive. People are like, you got to make your own stuff.
There was a distinction.
Yeah. So like sometimes some people do both, but like I go out almost strictly for commercials. And then, trying to get theatrical. Like I wound up making an entire full-length pilot that I was starred in with two of my buddies that Enzo helped with. And being like, they were like, yeah, you need to make something. And then people assign you. And like, I did a GoFundMe. I raised like $20,000 and made this whole thing and still couldn't get theatrical rep. I do all these sort of workshop showcase things with theatrical agents. And you go and you pay like $80. You do a scene in front of 4 agents and they give you notes. And like I can't tell you how much money.
Wow, that sounds parasitic.
It's awful. They're technically illegal. And they broke down, but there's a couple like things, and all of them say, "Oh yeah, you're really good, you're really talented." Like I have a degree in acting. Like I know I'm a decent actor, and they'll just like take my money and be like, "See ya."
Yeah,
and it's so demoralizing.
Yeah, that's the paradox, right? Is that by the time you have good management or good agent, you don't need it.
Yeah, yeah. Like you need help.
Yeah, I guess that's a blanket statement, but I don't know.
It's true. It's like I need an agent to get these parts, but like when I go to meet an agent, they're like, "Well, you haven't done anything," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, I don't have an agent. I need you to do it."
Right.
And it's just, it's so difficult. It's also not a good time to be my type. So I hope that the pendulum swings back the other way, but like it's really all about diversity in roles right now. And so there's just not a bunch of parts being written, and there's already plenty of white male actors out there. So they're just not looking for me. Like I don't want to seem like the bitter actor who's like, man, it's all about diversity. Like this is bullshit. Like I'm not bitter about it. It's all great that it's all about diversity for the first time ever in Hollywood. But like one of the guys that I caddy for is a showrunner of a huge TV show. And he's like straight up tells me, he's like, I'm not allowed to hire you. I'm told by the network.
Fucking hypocrites. The hypocrisy is like written all over that. I mean, because if we're not seeing, colors, then how could you like reverse discriminate? If it's an egalitarian viewpoint, then you wouldn't be making that distinction in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to correct a problem, but also like,
right.
I apply to a lot of like writing fellowships and directing and like trying to do contests and fellowships for writing. And like in no other job in the world is there a question of, do you identify as transgender or homosexual? I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to ask that question in a job interview.
Yeah.
Why does it matter who I have sex with for the purpose of writing? Like, I don't think that bears, it's a personal question. I don't think that bears at all to my level of talent of like, well, he's not a good writer, but he has sex with men. So like, and I don't think it's for that. It's to try to get diversity in the room. And I understand, but I'm just like,
what a trip.
What does this have to do with anything?
I know. I always do choose not to self-identify.
I think I should start to do that.
I do like, fuck you.
It's only going to hurt me to identify as a white guy. They're like, it's only going to hurt me.
Are you seriously asking me this?
I don't know. It's a weird time. And again, like I'm all for it and I understand and I'll wait my turn. And it's just incredibly competitive. So you just need to, okay, I didn't get that fellowship. I got to go back and make harder and be undeniable until, or, what I've finally doing is just making all my own shit.
Yeah.
Because you can't really wait for somebody to give you permission.
Well, me too.
Yeah.
That's how you got to do it.
Yeah.
I'm super happy to have worked on the stuff that you make.
Yeah.
Really stoked.
Yeah, that was super fun. Those were fun. But even with that, it's like, okay, I made it and it's great. But like, now what do I do with it? Like I submit it to festivals and I try to get it out there and I get screenings. But even when you make it, it's like still, just when you think that you're doing everything you can, you're realizing there's a whole other level of stuff you can be doing.
And it's a balance too. Like you have to know when to back off. Like, all right, let's just focus on something new now.
Yeah, that's the worst.
I don't know when to stop pushing.
But honestly, by the time I'm done with the project, like finish making it, I'm so on to the next thing. But like that's when you really should buckle down and really try to push. Now that you have something, really try to like get it out there. But at that point, I've spent so much time with it. I'm like, just let me do anything else. You know?
Did you see The Last Black Man in San Francisco?
I haven't. I heard that's great.
You gotta go see it.
Yeah, I heard that's wonderful.
So cool.
Yeah, I haven't been to I guess I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Did you see that yet?
No.
Oh.
Is that the Quentin Tarantino movie? Is it out?
Yeah, just came out last week.
No.
Yeah.
And he's had enough of my attention over the years.
I don't owe him anything. Yeah, wait, so why did you mention Last Black Man in San Francisco?
Oh, just because I remember reading that the director was doing like some writing, because you were talking about the fellowships.
Yeah.
He was doing like Sundance writing camps and these type of things, and then just read some article on it. And also, it's like those dudes. Like, I'm surprised I don't know him. Probably know him like 1 degree of separation.
Yeah,
and it's like it's really cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that. I apply to all those things. The tough thing with those fellowships is that they ask a lot of questions, and they really want you to get personal and like tell you their story, or tell them your story of like, why do you need to tell this? And you try to like get as real as you can and be like, this is my story and this is who I am. Yeah. So when you get denied for those, it feels terrible. It's like, I'm taking this very personally because I bared all and told everything. And they're like, yeah, not interested.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you just have to be yourself, I guess.
Yeah. You know, it's all a learning process. I think when I'm ready, and it'll happen. But I'm glad that, you know, again,
they make you write like an essay?
A bunch of essays.
Jeez, yeah.
About your, you know, for all these different sort of fellowships and grants.
Ugh.
Yeah. It's a lot of work.
That's exhausting.
I mean, I like writing, and
me too, but they're not asking you like film studies questions.
Yeah.
They're asking you like about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard to get down and write about yourself. Like, how am I going to not sound like an asshole?
Yeah. Totally.
You know, my story, I was 6 years old and my father, and it's just like, I don't know. Does that make it a good movie if you know that my, you know, parents got divorced or whatever? Like, I don't necessarily need to know that Steven Spielberg had a troubled home life as a child to know that he makes great movies. Like, it's apparent in the movies.
Right.
But I don't think he'll be able to articulate the trauma he went through as a child in order to be able to make these movies.
Yeah, I can't imagine like being a college professor, like the, you know, like reading like college intake essays or something.
Oh, God.
That would just drive me insane. Like all these kids. But yeah, whenever I had to write essays and stuff in school, I was always pretty good at it. There was one in particular where it was like a modernist lit class, and the teacher was like, we had to write like the end of the semester essay about these modernist literature books. And the teacher in front of the whole class, this was like a shining moment, like that I'll always remember, said like, everyone in here, because it was a pass-fail system at my college. It was like, everyone in here got a check or a check minus, except one person who got a check plus because their essay was so good. And she didn't say who it was, but then she handed me my paper, and I was the one person.
What book was it?
To the Lighthouse and The Invisible Man.
Oh, wow. I just read a Virginia Woolf book this week. I loved The Lighthouse. That's such a good book. And Invisible Man also is incredible.
Invisible Man's an incredible book. Yeah.
Incredible.
And I remember it was like something about Zeno's paradox and how it like maps over the way that The Invisible Man is like a story within a story. And it's actually a book about itself. I don't know. I don't even remember. And I don't have the paper anymore.
I love that I do the same thing. Like there's a couple moments in like college where like the professor was really impressed and like I felt like I was a dog getting petted. But like I was thinking of that the other day where I was like, remember when I was so clever and I got that approval that I have been craving ever since?
Yeah. Having to write a manifesto or something, that can get hairy.
Yeah, you feel like a phony doing it for sure. It's like this, I don't
Artist statement.
Yeah, it's kind of phony.
Fuck you. You tell me.
Yeah, why? You tell me why I should do this. But honestly, those things, that's why I just make a lot of my own stuff because it's like, I don't want to wait around for permission. And honestly, doing the work myself, if I went in and did a writing grant and got a Sundance Lab and got really, really good at writing, that's a really wonderful skill and that would probably introduce me to a lot of great people. But by producing and directing and putting together, like I'm learning so much more about how movies are actually made, which I think is so invaluable to anybody like trying to work. Like I understand how the camera guy has to relate to, just all the nitty gritty stuff, which is so much better.
I get it. I'm not a big story guy. I've never been, like I appreciate a good story, but I've never been a big writer or story guy.
Yeah. I really respect both camps. Like I love Kubrick movies where everything is so detailed and every second is planned. But I also personally, like, I know I can't do that. Like, I'm not Stanley Kubrick. I'm not that anal. Yeah. I, have a big improv background. Like, I like being in the moment and, like, Cassavetes and just, like, seeing what happens with the chemistry. Like, oh, that's not working. Let's try this. Like, Kubrick would be like, that's not working. Let me retreat for 2 weeks and come out with a different thing. So, I don't know. I think everybody's different. But I really love the way that Cassavetes made movies. I don't necessarily love his movies. Like I want a little bit more story, but I love like especially as an actor, watching him let his actors really go is so exhilarating.
Yeah.
Like his wife, Gina Rowlands, she's incredible in his movies. And Peter Falk, like.
Yeah, I like Peter Falk a lot.
Yeah.
I remember one time I was sick, like in high school or something, I was sick and I didn't have anything to watch, and I found my sister had the Columbo like box set, and I watched every Columbo episode, and I loved it.
That's amazing.
Love Peter Falk. He's hilarious. He's like the same thing where he draws you in.
Yeah, yeah. It's not.
That's I need to work on my Peter Falk impression.
I won't try to do one for you. That's what I mean. Like. Now that I'm a little bit maybe older and a little bit more mature, like I really respect Peter Falk just being a guy going through his day. Like that's pretty hard to do without trying to be Marlon Brando. Like watching him just exist and smoke the cigarette rather than emote,
Yeah. It's like maybe a cult fandom.
Yeah.
Of Peter Falk, which is fun. Yeah, the story thing, I didn't know that. I'd be interested in like looking at what those fellowships and stuff ask for, but just like to submit to festivals would be cool. Just to make something long enough that's feature length that you could submit it to a festival and see what happens.
Yeah.
Like that's enough of a benchmark to like, that would be a cool thing to try to do.
Yeah. I'm working with a production company. I just wrote a pilot for them and they tried to shop it around. And again, it's like just so impossible. But now I've somewhat proven they like what I did in terms of writing. So I think that the next step with us, they're talking about maybe making a feature, like obviously a low budget thing. But now that I'm in with them, hopefully getting like $100,000 feature up and going, which like maybe try to do some sort of horror, low budget horror thing and make it really cool, like a horror comedy or.
Horror movies are notorious for low, cost, high return.
Yeah.
Like like if you look at whatever list of the cheapest movies that made the most money, it's always like, it's like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Blair Witch Project, like they're all horror movies.
We just love being scared. We don't give a shit how it looks.
Yeah, I don't know. There's movies out there where they, like contemporary movies that were done cheap, like Tangerine. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
And like Crystal Moselle, who I asked to be on the show because we have some mutual friends, she made that movie about the kids who were obsessed with movies in that Lower East Side.
Oh, that
tenement.
apartment? Yeah.
That movie kills me. Like, it's so good. I love it.
Yeah.
Just had like whatever, like a C300 or something, and just like.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it. You can do it. It's not everybody who has an iPhone can make a great movie. Like Sean Baker has been doing it and knows what he's doing. But also, like, you can just make a movie with an iPhone and let it go somewhere. I would reach out to him on Twitter. I've had some success getting people on Twitter to respond to me. I forget what I was. For the last short that I had, the incel short, I reached out to like Phil Lord on Twitter, and he like responded, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll watch it." Like one of the biggest directors in Hollywood, and I sent him my.
I don't know who that is.
He like did like the Lego Movie and 21 Jump Street, and he's a big like kind of comedy director. Probably not up his alley, this dark weird thing, but.
And you saw that guy at like Cobb's Comedy Club or the Purple Onion or something in San Francisco, the lead actor.
Yeah.
It's a funny story.
That was a trip. I also was like heavily stoned for that comedy show. So I was like hypersensitive. And then this comic got up and just really tanked and took a dark turn. And I was just like, whoa.
How did it get tied in with this like Reddit violent underground of involuntary celibate people?
He just kind of struck me as like an incel. Like he clearly had issues against women, and his sort of humor is that kind of really dark humor where it's okay on like some internet forums, but you can't say that shit in real life. And I was like, oh, this guy definitely doesn't understand women and holds them in contempt and thinks that like the way you act on the internet is okay to act in real life. And he's going to find out the hard way that you can't do that, hopefully.
It was cool. Yeah, the showing thing was those dudes that were like the little comedy duo guy that did those shorts.
Yeah.
That also showed at the premiere.
Yeah.
They were funny. I forget their name. I remember I looked them up, but then I forgot.
Rick Darge is one of them. He's so funny. I follow him on Instagram, and they do all this like wacky shit that's just really funny.
Yeah, I like their stuff too.
Their shit was so funny.
Really good.
Yeah. The water
puppy?
the
where he drinks LaCroix.
It just flies.
Yeah, the bit is like, he just starts drinking LaCroix and then he starts peeing and he shoots into the air like the Rocket Man.
They're like really absurd. They're perfect for the internet. They're like 1 minute, really absurd.
Yeah.
But like for some, that style can be so stupid, but they really commit 100%. And they're pretty good filmmakers. So it's like, it's they're funny. You should ask him to do the podcast. Is that okay?
We're just about at time.
Oh,
so
perfect.
I hope I didn't wear you out too much.
No, you're good.
And thanks for doing it.
This was fun. Yeah,
have you listened to any of the recent episodes?
Yeah, I think what's the most recent I listened to was maybe Jordan. Is that his name? Jordan?
Yeah.
Brooks?
Yeah, big bass.
Yeah.
Bass guy.
Yeah, his story is pretty cool. And then I think I'm not caught up on the latest. What was the last one?
My friend's who died's mom.
Oh.
Kind of heavy subject matter.
I've got an 8-hour drive up to Tahoe tomorrow, so I'll be able to really get into it.
I don't know what to say about it. It's pretty difficult and personal episode. So.
Yeah. Well.
Not a whole lot of laughies going on. Not a lot of yucks.
Not a whole lot of yucks. Well, good. I'll have plenty of time to go in on the road trip, do some music, get some laughs, and then get real, and then do some more music to get out of it. So
what's 8 hours in a car?
To Tahoe, or 7.5. Yeah.
Sweet. Man.
Yeah.
Busy guy.
I know. I am.
You're going with your fiance?
No, this is my buddy. Speaking of 50 Cent, he's 50 Cent's agent, and it's his bachelor party. So 50 sent us a case of champagne for the house, which is hilarious.
Is it going to be like balling out of control, like strippers and?
I hope not, because all these guys are like agents who ball, and I'm like the humble artist who's like living, you know, kind of on the cheap. I'm like, guys, like I know they're gonna do like, let's go to steakhouse tonight. I'm like, I don't want to go spend $100 on a steak and like get champagne.
Yeah. Damn. Sounds like it might be fun.
It's going to be a blast, but I'm just like, the whole time I'm just going to be angry. And they're like, let's go to the casinos in Tahoe. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of cash to throw around, but it'll be fun. I love that 50 contributed a case of champagne.
It's his agent's bachelor party.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he's tight with 50. Yeah. And it's funny. He's like a nerdy white kid who loves Star Wars from Pennsylvania.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. He's like
crazy.
I know. Yeah, and he like, since he got 50, he's like reps a lot of like rappers and stuff. And I'm like, it was funny. I asked him, I go, how do you like, why do, like, it was a kind of insulting question. It's like, why do all these rappers like you? And he's like, I never lie to them. He's like, their whole entertainment career, white guys have just promised them the world and like, I'm going to make you a billionaire. And they always, they're not honest. And he's like, I never lie.
What a
and
trip.
they respect that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's a good lesson. That's a good agent.
Yeah. You're not going to change the game, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a nobody.
Thanks for being on the 90th most popular podcast in the universe.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Fucking rock and roll.
Hell yeah, bro. Awesome.
You've been listening to the Cameron Adair podcast made by me, Cameron Adair. Thanks to Matthew Brown. You can find Matt at therealmattbrown.com. MATTBROWN. therealmattbrown.com. Go right now and pledge $5 on Patreon. And I love you. Thanks for listening. Ugh.